of this adversary. Agreed? We are not capable to deal with Satan on our own. But what Mike did say I thought was interesting. I wrote this down. I thought it was really good. It's, I said, what we know, it says, what do we have to fear about our opponent? Is Satan not our opponent? He is our opponent. And he is the devil and a deceiver and a liar and a murderer. And I go, really, a murderer? Well, he knew what he was doing with Eve. And he knew he was going to cause death, right? Because the Lord said, if you eat of this tree, you will surely, what? You will die. Okay. And Mike said, and what we do is we don't say we're going to attack. It says we respond, the Lord has spoken. Is that a good response? The Lord has spoken. That's our response to Satan.
That's what Jesus did when he was tempted.
Exactly. Okay? The Lord has spoken. I think, whoa, that's good. And then he quoted Psalm 47, and he said, be still and know that I'm the Lord, right? Be still and know. In other words, you don't go on the attack. Be still and know that I am the Lord. Wow. And then I was thinking of the verse everybody knows, right? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, right? Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and then do what? Attack. Oh, lean not. Oh my God. And of course, we do have a tendency to lean on our own understanding at times, isn't it so? Because we're so smart. We're so smart. I'm going to get into being so smart in a little while, okay? But I thought, isn't that interesting that what Mike said was very appropriate for this chapter. And so we know that the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. Now, interesting, the serpent, the word serpent is translated, could be translated snake or dragon. Okay? But it's some form of a reptile. Now, interesting, as we read further on in chapter 3, we realize that the Lord cursed the serpent. And what was the curse of the serpent? Right. He's going to crawl on his belly. So we can interpret that the serpent, when he approached Eve, was not a slithering snake on its belly. Yeah. It was something. We don't know what it was, but I'm thinking, well, that's, I always thought, there's some things I've got to correct in my thinking about Genesis, okay? And that was one of the things that I'm thinking, after I've studied the Word and I've done a little homework, I'm realizing, it's not about the books that I saw when I was younger with the snake up on the tree, right? It was an upright beast of the field. We'll get into it a little more. And the Lord made him. And we know that the serpent can be, and we know this from the New Testament. It's interesting, we find some depth, some explanation of this chapter in the New Testament. We're going to go there. It's really good. Okay, but we know that the serpent can appear as an angel of and the deceivers, and that's why they say, remember when they're talking to us about being discerning about those in the church and about false teachers. Remember, does the New Testament give us a lot of warning about false teachers? And they say they will come in from amongst you, right? And they will look like the preacher. They'll be the teacher. You go, why is it that in evangelical churches, you bring your Bible with you to church, right? So you can make sure that who's ever preaching is saying it right, right? It's kind of like the reason that we have the Second Amendment is not to protect ourselves from criminals, right? It's to protect ourselves from the government. You go, I didn't really, but it's sort of the same thing. You need to be discerning about this, right? And so it goes on. It goes on. So we've got a little background here on on the serpent. Okay? And he said to the woman, okay, he said to the woman, and I'm gonna stop right here. I thought, this is again part of I thought that I knew this, okay? And I thought that, look back down with me to verse 6, okay? Verse 6. And she took of the fruit and she ate it, and she also gave some to her husband. I think that's the first time we've got husband here in the Bible. So they were married. The husband, right there. Who was with her? I always wondered, now check this out. I wondered, what was Adam doing? Is he adult? No, as a matter of fact, we know that when he created Adam, that it was good. It was very good. And we also know from the law of entropy, it's a law, that things go from a state of order to disorder. True? Am I so far is this all correct? It goes from order to disorder. And Adam was sinless. Do you think his brain was working pretty good? I think he could be the smartest. I mean, he was given the job of naming all the animals. He did that in day 6. He was no country bumpkin. It could very well be that Adam was superior to us. We think we're so superior, right? I can't even figure out the settings on my phone sometimes. I need help, okay? But let's be serious. He was sinless at this point, right? And I'm thinking, what was he doing? He was with her. Upon more careful reading, I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind. Adam was not with her there at that time. So let's read it carefully. It says, and he said to both of them, right? No, it's not what it says. And he's cunning. This serpent is cunning. We're going to believe the Bible. He is going to pick off the woman, the helper that was suitable for man, while she was alone. He's going to find her. How do predators work with women? Do they approach them necessarily with their husband with them? Predators don't do that. You know, we tell our daughter when she was at college, we say, don't go back to the dorm room at night by yourself. Don't do that. And women, you know this, right? You don't get out of your car at night without looking around, and right? She was alone, and the serpent found her. How? Now I'm saying, just in the context, what it says is that he said to the woman, right? But I always thought they were together, but it's not so. It's not so. Let's go to the New Testament for some clarification, all right? Go with me to, I've got it here in my notes. Go to 2 Corinthians 11:3. 2 Corinthians 11:3. And it says, But I'm afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve by his cunning, your thoughts will be led astray from a sincere and pure devotion to Christ. Again, talking about false prophets, right? It doesn't say here in 2 Corinthians 11, it doesn't say that Adam was deceived. It doesn't say that. It says, no, it says, but as the serpent deceived Eve. Bing, right there. How about this? Go to 1 Timothy 2, 13. 1 Timothy 2, 13. For Adam was formed first. Right? We know, we're good with that, right? We believe that part. Adam was formed first, then Eve, and Adam was not deceived. But the woman, okay, was deceived and became a transgressor. I'm not going to get into the next verse, okay? We're not going to go there. Okay? Because that's very complicated, okay? I'm going to stick to these basic things, okay? But let me read to you what MacArthur says in his study Bible. This is it's interesting, okay? But this is very fundamental. We're struggling as a fellowship. We've got some churches on the East Coast that have decided that it might be okay for women to teach and preach. They just did. It's a thing. It's happening in our fellowship. You go, really? Yep, it's happening. Okay, and the elders have been discussing it. You know, we've been discussing, gosh, how could this be? What are we going to do? You know, we're definitely not going to follow along. We're going to say the Lord has spoken. That's what we're going to say. Okay? But listen to what he says here. It says, a wooden, and this is in very small print, so you're going to have to cut me some slack as I'm reading this, okay? It says, a woman's subordinate role. Interesting, we're into roles, which it relates to what our fellowship is dealing with. This is so important. If this is, you know, this is dealing with roles back in Genesis chapter 3. And I want to maybe present to you that there were roles for the male and the female before the fall. Could be. And truly it is. And it says the woman's subordinate role did not result after the fall as a cultural, chauvinistic corruption of God's perfect design. Rather, God established her role as part of his original creation. Okay? God made the woman after man to be a suitable helper. Okay? And he quotes some verses. The fall actually corroborates God's divine plan of creation. By nature, Eve was not suited to assume the position of ultimate responsibility. By leaving Adam's protection and usurping his headship, she was vulnerable and fell, thus confirming how important it was for her to stay under the protection and leadership of her husband. Adam violated, it says Adam then violated his leadership role, followed Eve in her sin, and plunged the human race into sinfulness, all connected with violating God's planned roles for the sexes. Ultimately, the responsibility for the fall still rests with Adam, since he chose to disobey God apart from being deceived. It makes his sin worse. Because he wasn't deceived. He just decided, he had heard directly from the Lord, he just decided he was going to eat. It's worse than him just standing there like a dolt. Where was I? Okay. I was on the roles of men and women, okay? And I think I got all the way to, and the woman, and he said to the woman. Isn't that as far as I got so far? And he said to the woman. Now here we've got, and I'm thinking to myself, hold it. This beast of the field approaches Eve and starts talking to her. Didn't she think that was a little odd? And I wrote this down, wouldn't she think that's suspicious? You go, well, ho, I have to remember, there was no sin. Everything was good. Everything was, at that point, very good. You know, we're suspicious because we deal in a fallen world, right? I tell my daughter, do not go back to the dorm at night. Why? Because there is wickedness in the world, right? So we're suspicious because we're infected with sin and we know how it works, and we're wary. But Eve, to her defense, there was no such thing as sin. Why should she be suspicious of this? And maybe they were in the garden still discovering. I'm just making this part up, okay? But I asked myself this question. Maybe you have the answer. How long were they in the garden before the serpent showed up? How long was this happening? We don't know. It doesn't say.